News from Mosul has largely been dictated by the so-called Islamic State or Daesh in Arabic. But the BBC has managed to obtain exclusive footage of ordinary people filmed over several months last year. The picture they paint is of a city under siege. This Christian neighbourhood, once part of Mosul's diverse ethnic fabric, is now a ghost town. Their homes have been locked up and confiscated and branded with an N, labelling them as Christians. This reads property of Islamic State. Around 60,000 once lived in this city. Other minorities have also fled, fearing persecution. IS has launched a campaign to destroy all Shia mosques and shrines, and even Sunni sites deemed to contravene their ideology. Here people run out of Prophet George's mosque and tomb as IS announces their plans to demolish it. One of Mosul's oldest historic sites, and many like it, now reduced to rubble. The suppression of women is central to IS ideology. They can't leave their homes without a male relative and must be fully covered up at all times. Here a woman is being chastised by an IS militant for not wearing gloves.
ما بينه شيء يعني ستر للمرأة وشيء حلو ومرتب بس الأسلوب اللي جانا بينه أسلوب جاف. الغلاء اللي صار بالخمارات يعني كان الخمار ب 4000 دينار ما حد يشترينه هسه 15 و 25 وكله خياطة محلية حتى ما استيراد تقول اللي عنده 4-5 بنات أشهر.
To maintain their grip on power, IS has sought to keep Mosul residents cut off from the outside world. After seizing the city, they aired their videos in public places, such as electrical stores like this one. Later, they set up their own media points to disseminate their message. Most schools have now been closed, and those that are operating are forced to adhere to a strict IS-imposed curriculum. Through their violence, propaganda and psychological manipulation, they've established full control of the city. And as each day passes, those who remain inside have little choice but to become increasingly dependent on IS rule.
A city that's really under siege. Well, with me here in the studio to discuss this further is Mina Al-Oraibi, Iraqi journalist and assistant editor-in-chief for the Arabic newspaper Asharq Al-Awsat. Mina, thanks so much for joining us. It took the BBC months and months to obtain that footage. I mean, extraordinarily, we took the material house to house to get it out. How much control does this group actually have on people and what they're saying and doing with each other?
Well, don't forget, they came into a city that's been terrorized for decades. You've had war, you've had dictatorship. Previous to ISIS as a brand name taking over the city, for the last few years, you had extremists controlling many parts of Mosul, and that was a failure, really, by the government in Baghdad to secure the city and to eliminate these extremists. So the control they have is by fear. When you're so scared, you don't know if the person next to you could be somebody that's actually working with ISIS or helping ISIS. So that lack of trust between people has been built up, and it's a fear. Also, to get the footage, I mean, it's incredibly brave for the people that actually did get these videos out, because they're putting their personal lives at risk, because they're urging the world to see this and to call for getting rid of ISIS. It's been a year. And so I think their main method of control is by fear. They're not present everywhere on the streets. The reports that we get is they're not present everywhere on the streets, but they can come at any point. And so if they come at that point and you're not dressed in the right way, if you're not behaving the way that they see is right, and again, it's a control tactic, there's no one to save you. They can kill you or they can do anything, and there's no one to save you. That complete security vacuum that they filled now is how they control the city.
And they're controlling the law and order as well.
Absolutely. There was a lack of law and order in Mosul from about 2004, 2005. And slowly that started being eroded. And you had organized criminal groups, you had organized mafias, basically, ruling different parts of the city. Not all of it, but different enclaves. And of course, these have emerged. They cover their faces. A lot of the Iraqi members of ISIS cover their faces, and so people don't actually know who they are. And they help to control the streets.
And as you say, the people of Mosul had many grievances. I was there a few years ago, and they were complaining about the Shia-dominated military suppressing them. And they talked about an uprising. Are Sunni tribesmen still working alongside IS militants?
I don't think it's so much sectarianism. I think it's more a sense that the city was completely abandoned, not taken care of. Checkpoints were put up only to protect certain officials that were within the city, and the rest of the city wasn't protected. Issues of kidnapping, issues of people being tortured by different gangs that kidnapped them were never dealt with. There was never law and order properly after about 2003 onwards. Not to say that in Saddam's time it was a great time, but it's just to say that the lack of law and order eroded any sense of protection that ordinary people can have. Now, regarding Sunni tribesmen, I think there are certain groups, of course, locals that are working with ISIS, but I don't think it's necessarily as tribes, rather as people who are either thinking the other option is we're going to get militias that have been recorded to commit huge atrocities coming over and taking revenge on us, or that ISIS will come and kill us, so might as well work with them.
Well, we've managed to collect a lot of material, of testimonies and people describing what life was like for them. Yasmin was working as a sculptor in Mosul before fleeing last year and describes how life changed for women after IS took over. Let's have a look.
خرجنا من الموصل لأن صار تضييق كثير علينا خصوصا إحنا البنات. فرضوا كثير أشياء منها إنه أساسا إحنا بمجتمعنا محافظين. فرضوا النقاب واللبس الطويل جدا ولازم يكون أسود. إحنا خصوصا الشباب والبنات خرجنا لأنه البنات كثير شغلات سمعنا إنه خطف ويعني شغلات اغتصاب وهاي الشغلات. أما الشباب قالوا إنه تجنيد إلزامي لصفوف داعش. الآثار الموجودة بالموصل هي حضارتنا إحنا العراقيين. هي يعني لما شفناها تدمرت يعني أصابنا هول، حزننا كثير على هالتدمير اللي صار لها. صار لها آلاف السنين هاي الحضارات، فراحت بلحظة تدمرت كلها. ألغوا كلية الفنون، كلية القانون، علوم سياسية، فنون تحديداً لأنه هي من وجهة نظرهم أنه هذا الشيء حرام.
And that was Yasmin, a sculptor who's managed to flee Mosul. It really feels like every aspect of life has been touched in some way, whether it's the historic sites and Mosul was really a mixing pot of so many communities living side by side.
Absolutely. You have society being torn apart. Literally, people were pushed out, but also those Maslawis who are people from Mosul who are even Sunni backgrounds, those that could left. I mean, you had 500,000 people leaving the city this time last year. And so you have fear again, but also schools being closed down. The University of Mosul, for the first time, shut down since 1957. And so a year has gone of people's education, of the sort of future that they have. And like you said, it's also taking down the historic sites, the mosques, the churches that people loved so much. And so there's a sense that your history is being robbed from you at the same time as, of course, the future seems very uncertain because, of course, now that Ramadi has been taken over by ISIS and the military focuses on that, people inside the city are petrified because they think, how much longer is it going to be?